Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The presentation is entitled RFID and Barcoding, and it's further business opportunities. What I'm not going to do is you'll be very pleased to hear, I'm not going to go into the technology in depth. That's not my intention. I'm going to cover, first of all, a slightly technical subject, which is about identification, just to give you a feel for that. But then more I'll go into, as I've been doing international work largely over the last 3 or 4 years, I'll explain to you where I think some of the posts around the world are really doing some excellent things with RFID and barcoding, and where they're really gaining some business advantage. I'll then cover, I'll show you some of those opportunities, I'll show you some of the technologies that are being used, I'll explain a bit about the mail measurement activity that I've been involved in, and then I'll go into about 3 or 4 opportunities that I think there are for posts, but these will be large-scale opportunities. And hopefully there's some interesting stuff in here. I'll only deal with it at top level. Within my company, I run quite a lot of webinars for niche areas, and we'll be doing quite a lot of this stuff in more detail on webinars. So take my email address, sign up for this sort of webinar concept where you can involve your experts. Okay, so this is a techie slide, the only one in the presentation. I've been doing RFID and barcoding for some time. It's not just the technology side, but it's actually how you link it to the business. The one thing we have in the mail and express business is we have physical items, and we have information systems and customers and suppliers. The thing that links it is this link of the identifier of the item or the object to the system, to the business. We've now had, in different parts of the businesses, the express side obviously is quite well developed in terms of barcode identification over the years where you track everything. On mail, there's an awful lot that's tracked, but there's very little that's actually homogeneous, that actually links together. So this is an item identification concept called ISO license plate. ISO license plate means that it is an open identification standard. It's not closed loop, it's open loop. A lot of the developments in post and mail in the UK and other places have been closed loop. So you use a barcode within your business, and you use it as a way of excluding or locking in your customers and stopping and providing some difficulties with linking in with other partners. So this is the concept of ISO license plate. I've recently concluded the mail measurement project, and what we do with the RFID tags in that is that we give them this ISO license plate. So within the code that says this item is unique, the first thing says J. J means the UPU. After that, there's a thing saying, what's the product, what's this is being used for, and then what's the serial item identifier. That item then is unique. It's not only unique for the post, it's unique for the world. So this concept provides universal uniqueness. Okay, and really where I'm coming from is that in the past we used to have integration at the edge. So when you handed over an express parcel to another carrier to deliver in Mozambique, they would take your number, they'd have their number, they'd correlate the two, and they'd provide some correlation of it. So you daisy chain the RFID, the tracking, which is fine, provided your daisy chain doesn't break. And it gets horrendously complicated, and you get parcels arriving with more barcodes than there's space to put them on the parcel. Now, I'm saying don't do it at the edge. The concept, I think you move away from the edge and you go to the core. And by putting a universal number that's absolutely unique in a global sense across all industries on the item, whether it be a parcel or a letter, then that provides your integration. You don't use different identifiers as you move through the process. You use the one, but it's universal, it's unique, and it's open. That's quite a fundamental concept. And this is just a very classic example of it. The UN has a standard for international express mail and letters, tracked items, and this is just the standard. But even here, they've failed at the first hurdle. This has been around for years. This has been about 20 years old. You're supposed to be able to use a barcode uniquely across countries. But what they do is they take the EMS barcode from the UK, and when it goes to the US, they correlate it, and they put the US one on. So it defeats the purpose of the exercise. You have this correlation and over-labeling internationally, which really doesn't work. I just wanted to introduce the ecosystems within which we work. I mean, you're familiar with this, but I think it's worthwhile just just explaining, because when you're talking about unique serial identification, there's three elements. One is tracking, two is association, nesting, if you like, and the third one is context. And you've got to think of it in these three ways. So in other words, a piece of mail going into a tray, going into a ULD, when that ULD goes onto an aircraft, you don't track the mail piece, you don't track the tray, you track the ULD. And because you track the ULD onto the aircraft, all the cages, all the trays and all the letters within the trays are now on the aircraft and tracked onto the aircraft. So you have this association. You also have association in terms of the way that mail and, of course, parcels are transported. You have the tray in the roll container, you have the roll container in the vehicle, and when the vehicle leaves the sort center, then everything within the nesting leaves as well. You have some external links to automation. There's some RFID in place at the moment, but it tends to be at the doors of the sort center. It doesn't really tend to link into the automation that's happening within the site. This core, if you like, you can imagine the postal service being collection and delivery around the outside and sortation and trunking in the middle. The sortation side does require item identification to power some of the machinery in the center. Big sort centers process 60,000 pieces of mail an hour, and they don't do that without unique identification. The automation market in the middle is worth about 3 billion euros. So it's a big sort of element. But it doesn't connect. There's no absolute standards for what happens in this core, and it doesn't connect with either collection or delivery. So we're missing a big trick. We're not connecting the whole network. We're actually got this core in the middle that's disconnected. This is the mail measurement project that I was involved in. The project here is we have a letter. We have an insert within the letter, and we have a passive RFID tag on the letter. This ID tag has a license plate identifier, so it's totally unique in the world. The passive tag is used to covertly measure the transit of the mail from arrival in the destination country to a market research panelist receiving it in the destination country. And for a long time, passive technology was not regarded as fit for purpose. So what we had in place was a technology that had been around for about 10 years called active, or in fact semi-active, installed in about 10,000 reading sites in 1,000 physical sites in 50 countries. So a really big network. But the tag originally cost about $50. Over time came down to about $20, and I think it's now about $16, $17. This tag is 20 euro cents. That's a big difference. This is the RFID gate that sits over the doorway to actually read this tag. The tag and the gates are designed for worldwide deployment. So in other words, this technology, adhering to the slight variation in standards across the world, will work in 200 countries and territories worldwide. The first 20 have been rolled out. The next 20 countries are in train now to be rolled out. When we were doing the user acceptance, what we also did, we took it a stage further. This is a roll cage on a forklift with trays. In these trays, we seeded 100 test items using this passive technology. And because it's on a forklift because we motored it at speed through the door to make sure it worked. Well, we got 100% read of those tags. So that now shows where this technology is. But that's fairly recent. That's really only over the last couple of years. The other places where RFID is being used as opposed to barcodes is this is a Swiss Post parcel sort center. What Swiss Post has done is they've taken passive technology, put an RFID tag on every roll cage in their inventory, and they control their logistics using that. So what they've done in the first year mind you, they've reduced their stock of roll cages by 10%. So they got rid of 10% of their roll cages. They have an investment payback, had an investment payback in less than a year. So that's now where you can get to, and this is the largest RFID project in Switzerland. The mail measurements one that I was telling you about, the Linkso IPC system, that's the largest RFID project in terms of sites in the world. So the posts are big in this area. Where RFID is also used is a couple of countries use it for emptying mailboxes. There's two countries in particular I can think of. One is Denmark, and this is a Denmark post box. Slightly different design to the UK post box in that it's got a tilting bottom on it. So you put your bag under, you open it up, and the bottom tilts down and drops the mail into the bag. Well, on that bit that drops down, there's now a micro switch activated RFID tag, and the driver or the collector has a handheld. So it's not just I've visited the post box, I visited it but I couldn't be bothered to empty it. It's I've been at the post box and I've emptied it. And that information then being fed up into central systems. Now the one that's really impressive is the Italian post. I was at a control center in Italy where I could see every post box in the country, and I could see in real time when they'd been emptied. So none of this, the local depot and this local sort center send a report up and to the center, and you have a whole industry of people talking to each other and disputing reports. It's real time. There's only one such source of information. Now, I don't actually have a picture of the Poste Italiane sort center, which I think is really impressive. But what I do have is another type of technology providing the same sort of concept. This is a complex event processing. So you bring together all the information to actually make some business rules sense, to actually show what's happening. This is a company called Track. It's an innovation company out of Edinburgh University. And they take these real-time events generated by RFID tags and barcodes, and et cetera, and they put it onto this sort of complex event processing model. This is an airport. This is people moving through an airport, and the indicator screen on the left, when things come into red and when they get bigger, that's a problem. So actually you have real-time visibility at an airport and a factory, and I've asked them to help me put together a demonstration model for posts so that a postal CEO can see their operation at a glance and see where problems start to come up, bubble up through the operation. This is, if we move down to the mail piece again, and this is a little bit future, but at the top of the mail piece, we have a data matrix barcode, and you can also have printed electronics. So you can have a printed RFID tag. They can both contain the ISO license plate number, and you can read it either by visually, like on my PDA here, or you can read it using RFID reading. But the beauty is here that on delivery, at the moment we're equipping drivers to go out with fairly complicated technology to do the delivery, the proof of delivery. The recipient can do the proof of delivery. I've now received this. I can confirm that transaction with the e-tailer or the mailer that has sent me the mail. So there's going to be a move, I believe, from the carrier having the technology to the receiver having the technology, and a more of a direct relationship between the receiver and the sender. And one example of this is these barcodes, which are used extensively in the Far East. These really came from the Far East. They contain kanji characters, so they're very, very well thought of in the Far East. And also in Central Europe, Germany use this a lot. But these barcodes contain information that can direct you somewhere. So as you can see on there, there's a music note can direct you to iTunes. The house picture can direct you to a URL, to a website. So there's a lot of opportunities to use this sort of technology. Really, I was thinking more for the response side of direct mail. So when you receive a mail piece, you have a barcode like this that automatically directs you to a response page on a site. And what this company does, it's a German company, I was speaking to them last week, it doesn't just direct you back to a website, it puts you through a campaign management system on the way there. So you actually can see how your campaign is progressing and what sort of impacts it's had. Seems to be moving forward from this. Here we go. Now, just looking at a couple of the opportunity areas, the larger opportunity areas, where you've got to think, I think, is that in the past it used to be, I'm dealing with these companies. I think you're now going to say industries. So what are other industries doing, and how can we take advantage of that? This is really about e-commerce and retail. On the retail side, high street, driven initially by companies like Marks and Spencer's, very much now by companies like Avery Dennison who provide the tags. They're putting together a concept store in London. It's not open yet. It was supposed to be, but will be opening shortly, where they use RFID on items to do stock control, to do all the management of the retail activity. But on e-commerce, they have a separate warehouse, and they take all this stuff off. So it's a bit crazy. If you had the RFID tags on, say, 4 shirts in that box coming out of an e-tail shop, you can read RFID through paper and through cardboard. You can actually read the contents. And similarly, you can read the contents of what's being received as well. So the receiver, if they've got an RFID reader, can also get into this. So that we're missing a really big opportunity on the e-commerce retail side, I believe. The other area where this really has some traction is that one of my other areas I work a lot in is in aviation and defense. And there's an initiative now called UID, Unique Item Identifier, which is used within military supply chain. It's the largest supply chain in the world. It's used if you're a shipper to the Department of Defense, you've got to put your items in a box, and the box have an RFID tag on it. It's that. If you're shipping stuff to Afghanistan from the States, it goes in a bigger box with a bigger RFID tag on it. If you're building an aircraft, and the two examples, one is the Joint Strike Fighter, which you see at the top, but the other one is the Boeing Dreamliner. Those aircraft now have unique item identifiers, ISO license plates, on all the critical components. Now, if you take that in defense, if you take GMS that we've done, Global Monitoring System that we did for the mail measurement, they both use the same identifiers. This is going back to my initial point, an ISO license plate that is unique. So you can move defense items through post, you move postal items through defense, and the thing works, surprisingly. But this is only one area. There's a whole lot of other areas. There's healthcare, there's pharmaceuticals, there's a whole stack of other industries that are now using this technology, which then opens it up for our industry. There's also, this is quite a burgeoning area. They call it Internet of Things, and some really big activities taking place in the European Union. This is a major trend. So it's not just an industry trend. Now, I've really concentrated on the operational side, and there were some comments earlier on this morning that were saying, and it's a common thread in these events, or electronic substitution. And it's been said and said and said, and people are beginning to believe it. And in a way, it's true. But in my travels and the posts that I speak to, the ones that are actually making a profit, not making a loss and making a profit, are the posts that I've actually not said just mail and parcels, but we keep our postal bank. We have financial services, and we have electronic services. We do email. We do trusted email services. Where you've got all 3 parts of the circle, the physical, the virtual, and the financial, and you have the trust credential, you actually grow your business. You're multi-channel, and each channel is reinforcing in a certain way the other parts of the channel. So I won't mention names, but if you think of posts that have gone just into the physical side, a declining physical side, are at extreme risk. Posts that have actually taken a more holistic view and says we are about physical, virtual, and financial, and more important, the bits that are really interesting is where those 3 circles overlap. So for instance, virtual and financial could be remittance services. That's a big business. E-commerce is about financial and physical, getting paid for shipping, or paid by customers, proof of delivery, payment on delivery, those sort of things. So the holistic model that's been, as I say, has been adopted by some posts, and those posts are quite progressive companies like Sweden Post, companies like the Italian Post, companies like Canada Post. They've all adopted this holistic model of the 3 circles. So not just declining physical, but actually all 3. And particularly as important is the trust credential. Now, I know we're moving on to downstream access. This is a mail center, fairly complicated, fairly crowded. Just think about some of the things I've said and some of the things that are happening in other countries. Identifiers, roll cage tracking, all the sort of controls that you have. We really haven't concentrated on that within our downstream access. That actually if you have effectively supply chain visibility, but supply chain visibility in that bit where you've handed over to delivery, think of the benefits that gives and think of the product flow-through that you can get when you do that sort of thing, product add-on, product innovation. So really what I'm suggesting is some sort of approach which says when a downstream access provider provides mail to raw mail, it comes in a roll cage, the roll cage is identified by RFID. When it arrives in the sort center, you know it's there. When it's broken down. So in other words, control over the assets, the nesting, and some in-transit visibility, supply chain visibility. Those are the sort of terms that are used in other industries, but we actually need something in our industry, I believe. And then finally, this is me. The exciting bit, I think, is the bit on the top right, and just as a practical demonstration, if you have your iPhone, and if you download the app, which allows you to interrogate these codes, that will land you on my website. And it will go through a campaign management system. So we can actually show you the results of that campaign management in real time. So you can actually sort of get it, someone's doing it. And there's no prize for being first. But I think that's a practical demonstration. When you get the slide presentations back at home, try it, download the app, try your iPhone, see how it works. And I think if someone's doing response to DM, it becomes very powerful. And it was actually the answer, I think, to some of the questions that were raised in the earlier presentation. So that's me. I work with a number of top consultants and top universities in this area, available for business, available to consult. It's not this sort of area, just to be clear, I don't think businesses they tend not to have an expert in this area. What tends to happen is this is done according to their business needs, and then they move on. So you do this once. This isn't a continuing process. So if you introduce barcoding system, you get a barcoding expert, you do it, and then you move on. So you don't have this within your business. You've actually got to go looking for it when you need it. So that's my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Richard.